Good morning, good people. Welcome to my crazy Tuesday morning. I say crazy because if you were in the house last week, I say in the house because if you were watching my Facebook Lives last week, we had a leak in the building good morning, Charmaine. We had a leak in the building, which I reported, which caused all sorts of dramas with my Facebook Lives. And so they've got to the bottom of the problem a week later, and our water has just been turned off. Thankfully, we have a guest loo and a kitchen, and it's run by separate water. It's very clever. Yes, so there's that going on in the background. And I also realized when I was trying to set this up that I have done a massive clean out, as one does in these times when one is suddenly found sitting at home. And morning, Karen. Yes, I'm crazy this morning. I'm like, ha! If I'm talking too fast, it's because I've been on this like mad panic rush to get everything done before my life. So, maybe I'll have a cup of coffee. Sip of coffee. Yes, I need a sip. Well, hello. That might just wind me up a bit more, but the caffeine. But hello. Okay, catch my breath. Also, I've just had a delivery from, I think it's from Jackson's. Yes! Okay, so you get to see my opening. It's literally, this is not staged. These are more art supplies. So I was given a gift voucher for Jackson's art supplies in the UK by my good friend Elizabeth, and I'm just going to see. Okay. Oh, new art supplies from Jackson's. I've been doing these Zoom meetings with some of my fellow art friends. Oh, this is just in time. Oh, it's so exciting. More golden opens. Oh, it's the other set. And some crackle paste by Golden. Ha! Oh, I better not do that too loud. I'll break your ears. And these should be brushes. Huge box for 2 brushes, but hey, exciting stuff. Let's throw that across the room. Okay, I'll deal with that later. Let's take these out. Oh, new brushes. It's so exciting. I'm not a makeup girl. I'm not a nails girl, but I'm sure a brush girl. Oh, these look so nice. I always do that. I normally actually do it on my cheek, but I can't get my cheek down there right now. Okay, good morning. Let's see, there's a whole lot of people in the house. Okay, so that was fabulous timing. That's why I'm a little bit late, because I was dealing with the housemeister and our water issues, which are ongoing, and a delivery, which is fabulous. So, okay, catch my breath. Today is all about color. And well, this whole week is, the rest of this week is. Yesterday I did my live about the coloring of my canvas, which I had spray painted black, and I added texture paste and, not texture paste, rust paste, and waxes too, both matte wax and the metallic waxes too. But from today, I promised my fellow past students that I would do some more art, and I've got a few people who've been asking me for some help on the more arty side, on the what I call traditional art side. I'm a trained graphic designer and accidentally discovered I could teach when a friend of mine asked me to teach her shading. I used to go for fabric painting classes once a week when I was working for myself, just for some company. And the girl that used to sit opposite me, or the woman, kept having to ask me for help because there was one teacher and 10 of us, and the teacher was usually quite busy, and the teacher would kind of she would say, what do I use to shade these flowers? And the teacher would say blue, and then move on. Not how, not why. And I would land up quietly trying to teach her from across the table, without trying to embarrass the teacher. And so Ria and I became friends, and she used to come to me once a week, and I used to explain color and shading and the whys and the hows, and then I realized I really enjoyed this, and a little place up the road from my flat became available, and I started art classes. Okay, it was fabric painting classes because 20 years ago that was popular. Fine art has since taken over in a big way, in the way of mixed media and all sorts of things. But yeah, so slowly but surely my fabric painting classes turned into acrylic painting classes, because basically there's not much difference. I have got on my table mostly South African products because that's where I'm from, and I brought everything with me. So don't worry about the brand of the paint. You guys can go and get whatever is available to you. You can buy online. Yeah, online overseas is a big thing. In South Africa, it's a little bit more awkward. Deliveries don't always get there. So we have problems with postage and things like that. So, and I know that at the moment everything's on hold. So what I want to discuss today is the different qualities of paint, because it's a bit like when you learn to do anything, you need to learn to understand what you are actually using. And it's all very well to be excited about wanting to start painting, but it's a bit like trying to do, I don't know, algorithms in maths if you don't understand what 1 + 1 is going to give you. So this today is the 1 + 1, or the ABC of color and basics of art and what you need. So I have a few colors missing here on my color palette, and I did go down to my cellar where I've now got everything stored and found some of my missing colors. Fluorescent doesn't fit on the color wheel, but it's quite fun. I think I've got lemon, but it's a very dirty looking lemon, so we'll put a prettier looking lemon out. We have, now this always amuses me, flesh tint. Now, it's not even my flesh tint if you have a look, because people are not necessarily all the same color. We have people with olivey skins, we have people with dark skins, we have, yes, so I find this term offensive, but anyway, that's just me. I needed some ceruleum, I needed my viridian, I needed my ultramarine, I needed my Prussian blue, I needed my deep rose, also known as rose madder, and I needed another green, the raw sienna yellow ochre, and here's another fluorescent, and Payne's grey, which I'm going to stick in the middle. Actually, no, I'm going to put it next to black. So when you're working with color, you need to understand the essence of it. So these colors are particularly transparent. They are quite matte when they dry, and each company manufactures their paint in a slightly different way. Pigments make a difference to the actual paint finish at the end. So what do I mean by that? Well, you're going to find that your greens and your blues, which are made from pigments that come from metals and so on, are going to leave more obvious brush strokes in your paint than, for example, your yellows and oranges and ochres, because those come from natural, more dissolvable substances, and therefore they're not little tiny grains of objects that are now going to drag along with your brush and make obvious brush strokes. So that is just the first thing, to get to know your paint and what it's going to do. So there is a whole lot of technical information that as an artist it's important to get to know. So as I said, this particular brand of paint will dry flat and matte. This is also a South African brand of paint, and the Iris range, I happen to just have two of the fluorescents here. These ones have more body. In other words, they will stay more raised and they will dry shiny. So if you've got a combination of brands of paint that you are using within one painting, it is going to affect your ultimate finish. So if you are combining flat and matte and raised and shiny, you need to know this, because if you are mixing them, it can be to your detriment or it can be to your advantage. I use it to my advantage by, for example, using flat and matte greens in the background if I'm doing a vase of flowers, and I use my raised and shiny iris paints for the actual flowers. And so that gives you a contrast in quality and visual texture on your canvas. You then get what's called heavy body paint. So I don't have any of the normal De Rani paints. I only buy their heavy body paint. What do I mean by heavy body? Well, they call it heavy body. This stuff is a bit like what I used to nickname in my studio the Tipex. Tipex is a brand of correction fluid, and I don't know what it's called in the rest of the world, but in South Africa often you kind of generalize with one particular brand's name. I suppose it's like Hoover, or yeah, tomato sauce in South Africa isn't tomato sauce, it's all gold. So it tends to be brand related. So what do I mean by Tipex? This stuff will cover absolutely everything. Good morning, Beatrice. This is a bit technical in English. I don't know if Google Translate will help, but I hope so. So these paints they will cover black, for example, whereas these paints, you're going to struggle, especially with your paler colors, to go over a darker color. I know in oil paint you work from what's called lean to fat, which is your darker colors have less substance to it, and your fat is your white. So that's your denser color, and you can cover anything with an oil-based white paint. But in acrylics, you're going to really struggle with that, especially when your paint is as transparent as this particular range is. So sometimes you've painted something, but you suddenly decide, oh, this needs a bit of a highlight, or yeah, this needs a little bit more, but these paints are not going to cut it. You need to have a couple of the heavy body paints in your stash. And because I use so little of them, these last me a long time, years in fact. So that's what I use the heavy body paint for. Then my friend Chris in Cape Town, Christopher Reed, he's a well-known artist who does mostly chalk pastels. He trained in the States. He also knows a lot about golden paints because he comes from this, well, he's born in South Africa, trained in the States, has come back to South Africa, and he introduced me to this range of paints, which is why I was so excited that the doorbell went, because this is my newest package of these. For me, the cheapest way to buy them is in these sets. They're not paints that I use a lot of, because these behave like oil paint. What do I mean by that? Acrylics have the drying time of now. It also depends on where you live, the humidity, etc. will affect how your paints dry. So your acrylics dry incredibly quickly, and that's why I love them, because I can build layers and work really, really fast. So I can do one painting in one sitting, whereas if I was working with oils, I would need a couple of days to let layers dry in between, and I would need a few paintings on the go. So golden opens behave very much like oil paint in that they are acrylic, but they have the drying time of acrylic. So that's what I mean by, as an artist, you have to get to know some technical terms, because open time is the term used for how long something takes to dry. So the open time of these, you can heat, you can put them in the sun if you have some sunshine. You can heat set, you can use a heat gun and dry them. They will dry. Unlike oil paint, you cannot use a heat gun to dry oil paint. That is just not going to happen. So you can speed these up. But the reason I like these is there are some times when I need to work a little bit slower to, for example, if I'm working on shading of somebody's face or something incredibly technical where I need a little bit more time, these paints are perfect for that. You can, however, put what's called acrylic retarder into these paints. As you can see, it's clear. It's, to my mind, it's a little bit more like a glycerine. And so acrylic retarder will do what it says. It'll slow down the process of the drying of your acrylic paints. But because you are now adding another liquid to your paint, you are then thinning your paint even further. So paint that was already really rather transparent is going to become even more transparent. So for me, that's not ideal. Then what else have I got on my desk? Morning, Van. Well, it's morning here. Vanu, it's probably afternoon where you are. Yes, I am an intense committed art person. So today I'm just giving you the basics of the products and why I have what I have in my what I call arsenal of tools. And then we're going to do a little bit of painting. So I'm going through the paints, the reason why I have the different products, and then I'm going to go through a little bit about brushes and then a little bit about surfaces. And I'm hoping to do a little bit of painting in today's live. I'm trying to stick to an hour, but hopefully tomorrow we will definitely get a painting done. And if you're wanting to work with me, well, you can go and raid your stash and see what you've got. And tomorrow, so what I'll do is I'll post some photographs of mine that I'm going to be working from on my Facebook page so that you can download them yourself. So that's my plan for tomorrow. I'm jumping around a bit, but yeah. So what else have I got on my desk? I have got some glaze medium. So you get acrylic gloss and you get acrylic matte. And glaze medium is a way to thin down your paint. So in other words, if you're wanting to do like a wash, like it is what it says, glazes. So you want to be able to build layers a bit like watercolors, but you want to use your acrylics. If you add too much water to your acrylic paint, the actual like particles of paint become unstable. So in other words, they haven't got enough to hold together. So although your picture might work now, over time it might not last. So it might not be what we call in the scrapbooking world archival. In other words, if it's something that you're just doing for now and it doesn't really matter and you're not looking to be like one of the grand masters and have your piece in the museum 400 years from now, well, then that's fine. You know, all these things are a decision as an artist that you can make. But acrylic glaze is something you can add to your paint that will keep your particles stable and thin your paint out rather than adding water. So that's what your glaze mediums are for. I stand to be corrected, but this is just my experience and what I have been told and taught. Then over here you can see in South Africa, we get really huge jars of these things. This is gesso, and gesso is basically like the heavy body paint. It is a primer. It is, yes, you can mix it with any of these paints. It's incredibly thick. Then you have texture paste, and that is what it sounds like. You can build textures. So a lot of artists will prime their canvas, build texture on their canvas, before they even start. They use palette knives, they use forks, they use whatever tools they have available, and they build some texture before they even start painting on their canvas. Then you have gel medium, and this is like a glue. This one is not matte, but it's not highly shiny. And gel medium you can also mix with your paints for it's the same consistency as the base that these paints are from. So if you're wanting not necessarily a glaze where it's thin, but you're wanting a transparent color, you can mix these two together. Then we have primer, which is exactly what it says it is. It is canvas primer. So if you want to create your own canvases, you can do that by just taking any fabric, because that's what a canvas is. This is particularly fine weave calico. This could be a canvas. So I could stretch it around a block and I could prime it with canvas primer. Primer does tend to separate with time, so you need to make sure that you give it a good stir. And then primer and gesso have similar purposes. If you don't have primer and you only have gesso, well, then you can prime your fabric with gesso. It's a lot thicker and it's a lot harder to move on your fabric than primer is, because primer is designed as primer. Gesso is a bit of a multi-tool. So I have various canvases while we're now discussing canvases, and I'm just checking that I don't have something on my chair, namely a cat, before I sit down. I have various canvases here. Okay. Morning, Danielle. I'm gonna have a quick sip of my coffee. So in the shops you can buy lots of different types of canvas, and so you get a board canvas. It's a piece of hardboard inside there that there is some primed canvas that has been wrapped around, and these are great if you're an artist that likes to do what's called plein air, where you can work outside. They're not very squishy, they're nice and stable. You can pop them on your easel. You don't have the bouncing of the physical unsupported fabric. So these come in lots of different sizes. They're made by lots of different companies. They are usually the cheapest option. Okay, then you have what I call a skinny canvas, or it's called a stretched canvas, and that's what it looks like on the back. So different companies use different fabrics. So this fabric you can see is white, and it's normally a very light frame that they use, sort of akin to a balsa wood. It's not, but it depends. Then this company is a company in South Africa that makes bespoke canvases for artists, and their frames are made from pine, so immediately the frame is a whole lot heavier. It's also what's called a box canvas, so that is a deep edge canvas. For me, these are always more expensive, considerably more expensive than the skinny canvas. So I always feel that a skinny canvas should be framed. It doesn't look that great just hanging on the wall with this skinny little edge. And oh dear, I forgot to put my phone on silent. Oh. Okay, just ignore any noises coming from my phone. So, but if I have painted this canvas, and I always tell my students and myself to paint around the edges. I continue my picture around the edge of my canvas, and that is so that I can hang my canvas and it looks finished. Modern arts are great on these deep block canvases, and you can save a lot of money, even though these are more expensive, by not framing them. Framing is ridiculously expensive. I say that all in one breath, and then promptly pick up a canvas that's next to me and show you it's skinny, okay, but I have finished my picture around the edge. I always continue my painting around the edge. What is that? Oh dear, something that's got stuck in transit. I always continue my painting around the edge. However, what I do sometimes forget to do is the bottom, where it's been sitting on the easel. I always mean to come back and finish this off, but I usually forget. So, but as I said, this will normally go into a frame if it's a skinny canvas like this. It doesn't have to. If you finish your edges like that, it doesn't need to. So that is personal choice. Some people prefer the deep edge canvases, other people prefer the skinny ones. Here is a canvas I haven't even opened yet, and I wanted to show you these things come with the canvas. They go in these little slots. I'm not going to open that canvas now, but you can probably see it over here. They are canvas supports to help stretch your canvas and to support your canvas. A lot of people chuck them away, but they are worth just putting in there. They come with the canvas. They're designed to go in there. They have an angled one, so one goes in there and one goes in there, and they sit across each other like that. A lot of people don't bother on these little canvases and only do it on the big canvases. Well, personally, if you're gonna do it, you might as well. I mean, they supply it, use it. They wouldn't supply it if you didn't need it. You know what I mean? So, okay. I have a whole bag of them. We used to chuck them away, but yeah, at my studio. Right, where are we at? We've discussed this, we've discussed edges, we've discussed paint. Okay, we need to discuss brushes. Here is a brush storer, currently empty because I'm not going anywhere. These are great because they protect your brushes when you are traveling, and you can have them at different sizes. You get these at the art stores. I use this when I go plein air painting. It just helps to stop my brushes, like these delicious new ones that I got earlier, getting damaged. You get different types of brushes. This is what's called a filbert. It has a rounded top to it, so that when you put it down on the canvas, you don't get that harsh chisel-like edge in your paint. And I like to have some of these in my arsenal of brushes. I have all sorts. My main set of brushes that I use the most with acrylics, she says, scratching through this, which has become a bit of a disaster zone, is, and they're not here, probably because I put them out for washing and haven't put them back. I like a flat topped stiff hog hair bristle brushes, simply because with acrylic and canvas you have more control with what the paint does. But then again, it depends on what I'm trying to paint. So I have some round brushes, I have some flat brushes, I have filberts, I have some abused brushes because they got put away wet and rolled up in this thing. I have a fan brush, I have lots of small brushes, and then I have these watercolor brushes, the soft brushes, soft bristle brushes, some with this nice tip. And that is because, as I explained to you earlier, depending on the paint that I'm using, some brushes are going to show more brush strokes than others. Obviously, the softer the brush, the smoother the paint is going to go on. But at the same time, some of those brushes are not going to help you blend. It depends entirely on your style, your technique, what type of brush you're going to be using for that particular project. So here's another lovely filbert, and as a going away present, one of my students, Fred, gave me these delicious Raphael brushes. These are all filberts in different sizes, and it's very like, it's a bit like what I was talking about the other day. We buy stuff and then we keep it for special because I don't know, that I was talking about my friend whose wife passed away, and I was helping him clean out the stuff in the kitchen, and there were tea sets and dinner services that had never been used, and she'd never had the joy of actually using them because she was keeping them for special. And canvas is a bit like sandpaper on brushes. You have to be really careful. So unfortunately, over time, your brushes will get eaten away by the canvas, and you'll notice this especially if you have a flat tipped brush like this and you always work with that particular brush at the same angle. You will notice that slowly but surely these bristles will wear away at whatever angle it is that you work at. So that is, yeah, you can see this brush has done that. It's got a definite diagonal like that on the bristles. And so no matter how much you spend on your brushes, the canvas is going to chew them. It's just the nature of the beast. And So to that end, you can choose to work on a finer quality canvas. You get, oh, if you go in Cape Town, we are spoilt with a lovely art shop called the Italian Art Shop, and they have a room just dedicated to canvas, and you get linen, and you get, I don't know, I can't even remember all the different names. I mean, that's not even something I've gone into, but it is there for you to investigate. Then you can also use house brushes, as I call them. In other words, garage stuff, you know, stuff that you would paint the walls with. So I've got, this is what's called a varnish brush. They are great for doing great big backgrounds. This is also from the hardware section in the hardware store, well, paint section in the hardware store. And these brushes I found particularly great for doing trees and grass. So again, it depends on what you're going to be painting. If you are a portrait painter, you're not going to be needing things like this unless you want to use them for hair, for example. So good morning, Marlene. So it depends on what you're doing. You will slowly develop a set of tools around your style of painting, because everybody has a completely different style, a different technique. I'm a bit of a chameleon in that I will paint anything in any style. Sorry, I just need some coffee. I am known for my steampunk, but that's more on my mixed media side. I have done a few classes with a South African artist called Derek van Rensburg. I've learned lots of tips and tricks from him. He's incredibly free with his knowledge when you go to his classes, incredibly helpful. He's an amazing man. If you are ever in Cape Town and have the opportunity to go to one of his classes, do yourself a favor and do that. He also uses a whole lot of different things. In fact, I should have taken it out. I'll show you tomorrow. I've got a brush that's about this big. Depends on the canvas you're using. Obviously, if you're using a teeny weeny little canvas, that's not going to help one brush stroke and you're done. So that's a little bit about brushes. And again, it's kind of personal. It's a bit like, you know, whether what you eat for supper, whether you like saucy food, whether you like hot peppery food, whether you like vegetarian options, whether, you know, brushes and paint, and it's all so personal, because people say to me, what should I buy? What colors should I buy? So it's very hard because I don't know what you're going to paint. I personally like painting landscapes. So here I'm just going to show you a couple of my paintings. So this one you have seen. This is, so I work from photographs because I can't always be standing in the place I would like to be painting. And oh, this is a rather faded photograph because it got in the sun in South Africa. So this is a photograph I took in Nature's Valley when I was there on holiday, and that is the painting that I made from it. Then we have, I can't remember his surname, but this is a painting I did from a photograph from my friend George. Here is his photograph. He posted this photograph on Facebook, and it just absolutely, again, this is faded. Unfortunately, they were in the sun in my studio in South Africa. He had this stream of sunshine coming through the clouds, and it just caught these vividly yellow trees and these colors on the fields over here. And so I asked him, would he mind if I did a painting of his photograph? So that's something else to be aware of, is I will always try and work from my own photographs because there's no copyright issue there. If you find something online that you would really like to paint, like for example George's photograph, always ask permission, because that is recognizable as his image. So just make sure that you do the right thing and you ask permission before you paint something. You might never intend putting it out there for sale or on the internet or whatever, but it's just the good etiquette to ask for for that. Here is a canvas I actually did with Derek van Rensburg in one of his classes, and this was the photograph that he gave us, and this is my painting that I did from it. Here is another photograph I took while on my way down to the Eastern Cape on holiday. I became a professional speed photographer out the window going on holiday trips. So I would be driving along. It was my way of entertaining myself in a 12-hour trip down to the Eastern Cape from Cape Town to my gran who lived in Grahamstown and my brother-in-law who lived in Bedford. And so I would always have my camera at the ready, and I would see something coming up, and as we drove past, click, quickly take the photograph. So quite often there are reflections and things in the photograph, and funny little road signs and other weird things, but essentially what I was trying to capture was a little house with all the trees in the background. And this is a demo that I did for one of my Bergfleet High School continuing education classes that I taught to adults in the evenings. And you can see here that although the roof is green, I decided in my painting that it should be red because it just worked better as a painting. So just because your subject matter in your photograph is one thing doesn't mean, you know, you have artistic license, so you can change it to suit you. So those are the examples that I have got to show you today. And what else? There was something else I wanted to, oh, here also buried on my desk is a tear-off palette, and these are quite nice to use because you can just mix your paints in them, and then when you're done, tear them off and throw them away. If you are wanting to work with more volume of paint, you can by all means use one of these, which is rather tiny. And of course I don't have one out. Hang on a sec, let me just go across this video, which is now full of paper. Oh, crash bang. And get my other paint palettes out. So I have lots because I was a teacher. This is a 6-well one. You can see I was storing some paint in there. I've put some cling film over the top. Here's another 6-well one. That's a clean one, but yeah. And then I have an even bigger one. So it all depends on what I'm working on, what volume of paint I need, what palette I'm going to use. Also, what I did find is the quality of the plastic depends on how easy it is to clean. So there were some palettes that just never cleaned very easily. Like most of these, once it's dry, you can actually just peel the paint out. And yeah, so you can keep reusing these guys. But these are great for the throwaway things. Then this is actually a book stand that I found at a secondhand shop. It's great because it folds flat, and that is great for propping up your photograph that you are working from. So that's another handy thing. You can make your own, you can use another easel, you can prop it up against a shelf. It's not a necessity. Yeah, so that is where we're at with styles. So that is my go-to style, the kind of painting. I can do modern art, I can do portraits. I've had people come to me and say, here's a photograph of my son, but I would like it in this style. So they've seen a particular artist's work online, or a painting of, so one example was a customer who had a son who was a racing driver, and she saw, I think it was an Ayrton Senna painting that was of him that was particularly modernist, and she wanted me to paint her son's picture like that. So then I took his painting and made that kind of style. So I'm lucky in that I can paint in any technique, in any style, and I do a lot of research. Sorry, I'm wanting another sip of coffee. So yeah, so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go, I know I did color theory the other day with my craft things last week, but I just want to run through color theory, which is why I've got this color wheel, which is attempting to be a color wheel over here. And I got 2 ceruleans on my desk. Yes, let's not confuse myself. Let's try and get the color wheel back in some semblance of order. There we go. Take these guys off, they don't fit on the color wheel. Oh, and the last 2 things that I didn't discuss earlier. So you get metallics in paint as well, and I found this Reeves Gold to be particularly good. And then you get these interference colors, which are also by Dalerani. They're, for those of you who know Finnabear's waxes, it's a bit like her Opal Magics. So these, it's kind of clear with an well, that's why they call it interference. So this, oh, this lid broke. They normally have a black lid like that. These lids I find break quite often, so I've just used one of these guys. It just happens to have the same screw lid. Okay, so color theory, here we go. So again, I have abbreviated the color wheel, which is what this is sitting on, and this is something that you can now find online quite a lot of. They have the circle around the edge with this triangle in the middle, but in fact this is something that I learned 30 years ago when I studied graphic design. One of our lecturers drew this on the board, and it's something you can always remember. Everybody can draw a triangle. Most of us can remember that red, yellow and blue are your 3 primary colors. Green, contrary to popular belief, is not a primary. It is a secondary color because it's made up of a mix of yellow and blue. And what you will find when you are working with paints is that any of these yellows together with any of these blues will give you gorgeous greens. Then if you mix your red and yellow together, you will get orange. So here again, if you mix any of these yellows with any of these reds, you will get lovely oranges. But there's always a but. The world in theory, if you mix your blues and reds together, you will get purple. Not so much. So if you have a look at the blues and if you have a look at the reds, you will see that they're already quite dark. And the reds that I've got on my desk, although it says deep red, is quite orange as a base. And these blues, again, you will mix them, you will get a purple, but it's not the pretty purple that you are looking for. So this is where I always suggest that people have in their arsenal of paint what I call the cyan, magenta and yellow, which is what you have in your, I'm pointing over there because my printer is over there, what you have in your color printer. So with cyan, magenta and yellow, you can produce, and key, which is black, you can produce any color you like. So for my cyan I use cerulean. For my magenta I use deep rose, or rose madder is another name. It's a very similar color. And then of course your yellow. So with these 3 colors you can genuinely mix absolutely anything. And don't take my word for it, go and experiment. Go and get your colors, because you've been told that with your red, yellow, blue you can mix any color. And as I said, you will get beautiful oranges, you will get beautiful greens, but you will get revolting purples with those 2 colors, even if you add white. White will help because of course those 2 are already quite dark to start with. This is cobalt blue, and it will make purple, but it's not going to make a pretty purple. And to that end, thankfully, we can buy purple. So I have on my desk the cobalt violet and the dioxazine violet. Excuse my dyslexia, but they put far too many consonants in these words. It's like phthalo blue. And again with the greens, you don't have to mix every color. They come in tubes for you nicely now. Some colors are pure colors. What do I mean by pure colors? It's the absolute pigment color. So for example, like yellow ochre. Yellow ochre comes from Australia. They dig it out of the ground. and this color is one pure color. You then have other colors which are mixes, like Payne's Gray, for example. So Payne's Gray in Darla's brand, Payne's Gray in Reeves, Payne's Gray in Golden, Payne's Gray in Amsterdam is all going to be different because they've got different combinations of the base paints. So Payne's Gray is a mixed color, and that's what I mean by, as an artist, you've got to get to know and understand a little bit of the fundamentals behind the scenes. And this is what I also discovered when I was teaching, for example, at Bergfleet High School, and I used to have to put out a list of paints and things that people would bring with them, because I didn't produce a kit. People bought their own paints. And so somebody would come with rose madder from a different brand, and it had definitely a white base to it, and that is going to affect, when it's mixed with other colors, the outcome. So, and then I would hit this other problem where I would say buy sap green, and sap green by Darla is a very olivey green, whereas sap green, I'm showing you orange because I only have the Iris brand in Lumos at the moment on my desk. Sap green from Iris is quite a different green. It's almost like that. So although the names might be the same, the actual paint inside the tubes are completely different. And that's because the paint company has, I don't know, mixed up their own sap green, because who knows what they've used instead of it just being a pure pigment like this. So you will find that. And you, like, for example, navy blue, like Prussian blue, has a red base to it, and depending on what you're doing, that can, if you are reducing it with, for example, with a glaze, it can get quite a reddish hue to it. And so you've got to know and understand your paints, depending on what picture you're trying to paint, which color to grab to get the outcome that you want. And while we're looking at this circle, you can see in the middle here, so this isn't one that I created. Cheryl Lifson's daughter actually painted this for her one of her classes, one of her college degrees, I think, or for school. You get what's called tints and tones, and when you add white it's called a tint, and when you add black it's called a tone. And a fun thing that I love to show people is whenever you add black to yellow, it will go green. Black added to any other color doesn't really affect it, like when you add black to yellow. So that's yellow, and then that's yellow with black in it. It goes olive green. It's kind of like a party trick. It's fun to do with kids. So yeah, so if you want to make your colors lighter, obviously you add more and more white. If you want to make your colors darker, you don't necessarily have to add black. Black is what everybody grabs, but you can use what is called the opposite color on the color spectrum. What do I mean by opposite color? Also known as complementary colors. So on the color wheel, you have colors that fall opposite each other. So opposite to orange falls blue. Opposite to, well, let's use the primaries. Opposite to blue falls orange. Opposite to red falls green. And opposite to yellow falls purple. And that's again what I have got. That's what these arrows are in the middle of this triangle. Opposite to yellow falls purple. Opposite to blue falls orange. Opposite to red falls green. And how do we use this knowledge? Again, it's a tool. This information is... Sorry, I'm reading my screen. Nikki can't stop because she has chores to do. Yes, I will save this and it will go to my... I'm also putting these all on my YouTube channel so that people can find them all in one place, because as time goes on, these are going to disappear down my Facebook page. So, right, where was I? We were talking about opposite colors and talking about colors as a tool to use in your art. And if you think of Christmas time and the malls, they're all decorated with green and red. And it looks absolutely amazing together, because opposite colors have, so color is light, and different colors have a different vibrancy or intensity of giving off colors. So if I was to put these two next to each other, they bounce off each other. And if you've ever had the misfortune of coming across somebody who has created an advert in a magazine or newspaper where they have put red writing on a green background, you'd be forgiven for thinking you're going mad, because it makes your eyes bounce. It makes the letters kind of, it makes you feel like your eyes are bouncing. It makes the letters kind of feel like they are vibrating. And in fact, in the 60s and 70s, they did op art, and that was intentionally done with tools and tricks like this, with putting colors of the same intensity of opposite spectrum next to each other in stripes and rows and patterns, and it makes it look like they're moving. And I mean, they didn't have computer technology back then to do that. They just used good old art theory. So your opposite colors being red and green, yellow and purple. I'm going to grab this one because it's a little bit more obvious on screen. And then of course you've got your blue and orange. And so how do we use this information in art? Well, if you had to mix all three primaries together, so in other words your red, your yellow and your blue, or even your cyan, magenta, yellow option, you're going to get brown. I'm sure if you've seen kids painting or even yourself painting, as you're washing your brush, your water slowly gets more and more khaki looking. And so depending on the quantities of how much yellow you put to blue and red, you can get different shades of brown. And one of the things I always used to tell my students, so this is a 100 ml jar, happens to be full of white, but if I took a 100 ml jar full of orange and I took the tip of a teaspoon of this blue, I would get a rather lovely milk chocolate brown. And so this is what I mean by knowing and understanding your color, because different volumes of color are going to give you different outcomes. And this is only something you will learn with time and experimenting. People ask me often, how do I know what I know? Well, I spend a lot of time at my desk trying things out, experimenting, playing the what if game. You'll hear me say that over and over again. What if I use this blue instead of that blue with the same orange? What am I going to get? And so something I suggest you do is, with the paints that you have got, morning mom from the other side of the flat, and today I've got the clock here, so if you're looking for the clock in the kitchen, it's in my studio. I can see I've got not much time left because I think the clock is fast. My son was looking for the clock. Sorry, I've got it. So don't go on and on and on, because I can rabbit on about these things. To me, it's so interesting, and the more I understand, the more I can do. So, okay, we were talking about brown and how to use color as a tool. I digress. I go down rabbit holes. I have to bring myself back. Okay, so how do we use this as a tool? As I was saying, at Christmas, you can use the colors next to each other, but if you mix these, you're going to get brown. I'm talking about the opposite colors or the complementary colors. Why? Because green already has your blue and yellow in it. If you're adding red, you are adding the third primary, therefore you will get brown. Same will work for purple and yellow. Purple already has your blue and red, in theory, in it, and adding yellow, third primary, brown. Orange has your red and yellow in it, adding blue, third primary, brown. So as I explained to you, if you want to get a nice brown, take your orange, which already has your red and yellow mixed in it for you, and add some blue, and you will get a lovely brown. So talking of browns, browns don't feature on here, and you can purchase lots of browns. And this particular company used to make a color called 706 burnt umber. They've changed it. It now has a yellow base. It used to have a very red base. And if you if you wanted to make your brown lighter, a lot of people used to want to add white to it to make a pale brown teddy bear, like a light brown teddy bear. And what used to happen is it used to go pink, like a blush pink. In South Africa, we had a fabric house 20 years ago called Biggie Best, and Biggie Best had a dusty pink. And that brown together with white made the most perfect Biggie Best pink. Unfortunately, they've changed it and they now have a yellow base, burnt umber. And yeah, so here is Indian red oxide, here is burnt sienna, and here is raw umber. So these have names and these also have numbers. A lot of companies do the same. So this De La Rani Terra Verta Hue mixed is number 379. Here they will also even give you the opacity because this is a heavy body. Pyrrole Red by Golden also has a number. It's PR254. And so every company labels their products differently. And so it became a standing joke in my studio. If you wanted to shade something, well, raw umber was the answer to everything. It's just the most useful color I found in my arsenal of tools. But back to what I was saying about adding black. For shading, you don't always have to add black, because if you know and understand your color theory, you can add the opposite color. So if you look at these greens, they're all quite green, including that one. And if that's the only green you have and you're wanting to make it more khaki, what do? You add a little bit of the opposite color, red for example, and you will start heading towards this sap green or even towards this khaki color over here. You can of course add brown. It is preferable in my opinion to not always add black. Black can make colors dead. I would rather use what's this one, Prussian blue. Even Payne's Grey. Payne's Grey has some black in it, but it's not going to be as dead as black. You'll see what I mean when you start mixing around with colors and playing with colors, that you will have a certain deadness to your colors. So I think what I often do, like if I'm painting lemons for example, or if I'm painting lemons, I will use yellow, but then instead of shading with brown, you can use the opposite color being purple. It will give you the perfect shading color for lemons. A lot of people will reach for green if you want to shade lemons, but too much green and it'll look like an unripe lemon or a lime. So one has to be careful of that. So what are we going to get ready for tomorrow? Tomorrow we're going to be starting with our painting. I'm going to upload some photographs if I can find these on my computer. I'm going to upload them to Facebook so that if you want to paint along, you can do that. This is another picture from Nature's Valley. This is a picture from just outside Bedford. This is shot somewhere along the N2 on my way to Grahamstown. I then have some still lifes that I've set up with some flowers that I had. I've put fabric behind them. These were taken on my sister-in-law's farm, and composition is also quite important. So when you are taking photographs for your own use, here I'm further away from my image and here I'm a whole lot closer. I've like zoomed in and cropped in. So to me, that makes a much more interesting picture than a really panned out where you can see the whole bunch of flowers and all the lemons. Here I have another example of this. Okay, you can still see lots around that, but this was the original image where I walked in through the door and my sister-in-law had put this lovely little posy of flowers in the room for us. But I liked the old door and this cabinet, and so you can set up the same thing and take two different photographs from two different angles and it can look completely different. Then here we have some lemons, and here I've got a straight on close-up picture of the lemons, and here I've got a more angled view with more of the story of where the lemons were going on in the background. And here we get, oh, we've done the landscapes. So I'm going to try and see if I can upload these to my Facebook page if you guys want to paint along tomorrow. So tomorrow is paint along day, or watch me paint day. And again, I will... Cat, what are you doing? You've got yourself stuck. Okay, I have to go rescue the cat. Oh, he's rescued himself. So that's what I thought we would do this week. So today was a whole explanation, and a bit technical, I know, and a bit boring, but one has to understand one's tools before one actually gets going. So that's today's live. Hope you enjoyed that. For those of you who stayed to watch, for those of you who popped in and out, thank you. I appreciate it. And we'll see you tomorrow. Bye.